You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you. Hello everyone, welcome to Dirty Feet. Today we have a very interesting episode. We're welcoming two people who will be presenting at the Offta Festival in Montreal this year. The festival is from May 27th to June 1st, and both artists are actually part of a triple feature which will be presented on Saturday, May 31st at 8 p.m. at the Monument National. So first of all, with us is Caroline Laurin-Beaucage, who will be performing Charcuterie. It's a new creation that is actually part of a trilogy, as she describes it. It's the second act of the trilogy. The first act was Offta, which was presented at Tangente earlier this year as part of Double Bill with Amélie Rajotte. We received Amélie Rajotte on the episode at that moment. So, Caro, hi, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
So, this new creation, it's, as you said, it's the second act in this new trilogy that you've started recently. What can you say about the trilogy as a whole? This is a brand new project that just started recently with Offta. What exactly can you say about the trilogy as a whole?
I'm interested to be searching the relationship between the flesh and the soul, and I think it can be by doing research on that. I started working with raw chicken, and in the process, I discovered different ways and approach to work with the raw chicken, and so many images and so many ways of digging into that subject was coming up that I felt like I needed to do different steps to show different aspect of that work and the different evocation of that, what it could be and how we can be touched and how we can dig into that aspect.
There's a missing step there for me between the flesh and the soul, and where does the chicken come from?
I wanted to have a chirurgical aspect in the work. So I wanted to do the act of opening up. And it's where the chicken comes in, because I'm not going to open up a body on stage. So... yeah. So this is how this is my way of evocating the medical aspect, but at the same time casual, because we all cook, not everybody, but it's in our history, like seeing someone cooking a chicken or seeing your grandmother, or it's
part of the domestic experience.
Of the domestic experience. Even if you're a vegetarian or you saw that, it's like it's part of our world. You go to the store, you see chicken, so it's something that is very close to us. But at the same time, I wanted to change how we can view the chicken, and the chicken can be me. It's like, why do I have more importance than the chickens? Like, it's a little bit like philosophical questions, but it's where my intention is with the chicken.
As part of Offta, one of the most striking images, for people who haven't seen it, right from the start, very early on, the two performers, open up the chicken, prepare the chicken, and then hang it up on hooks, just like hooks hung from the ceiling, and you see the chickens just hanging there. And that's a very visceral image. That's a really gory image in a way, but at the same time, with the lighting and everything, it gives it this holy aspect almost of seeing the chicken there bathed in light. When you thought about that image, what exactly was the motivation behind going to that extent of just showing this raw flesh hanging from the ceiling?
I'm interested to play with images that are awkward images and make them beautiful. It's for me the same thing as when you experience in life like a tragedy. In each tragedy, there's a moment of enlightenment somehow. So it's a little bit the same. It's what I'm looking at in the work. It's like, actually, at the beginning of the piece, we don't put the chicken apart. We only take the skin off the chicken. So it's almost like we take his flesh off, and then we can see the inside, the muscles of the chicken. So we only played with one image, and with charcuterie, I want to go forward with that. So how much can we take apart? And how can we reconstruct together, rebuild?
Before, when you were talking about the different kind of layers of each of the sections in the trilogy, I imagined it more theoretical, and now I'm understanding that you mean literally, that you're going to be taking this further.
Yes.
Is there also a more philosophical layer that's being explored in this next work?
I think the next one is really the taking apart of the chicken and rebuilding it. Actually, I'm just going to say the task of the girls in charcuterie is to together they each have their own chicken, and they're just gonna peel up, like put apart the chicken piece by piece. And it's going to take the time that it's going to take. And then after that, they have to rebuild a chicken with one chicken with the two chicken. So they're going to sew back together and they're going to rebuild something. So it's a little bit, the underneath, it's like when you're being taken apart, how do you rebuild yourself? And how does it affect you? And then the two women are gonna, interact with each other in that rebuild. They might tell a story about something. Like I'm still working on it, but there's something underneath about the human fragility, the fragility of our body. I don't know, how the body is so much related, how our flesh is so much related to what we are, to our unicity, to our persona, to, why when I go to the doctor and that, I have the idea of having a surgery or being touched, that I feel like it's me that he's touching. So this is the questions underneath the work.
And I imagine you're also talking about falling apart and coming together in an emotional
emotionally
sense,
yeah. But I don't want, in my work, it's what I'm realizing more and more I create. Like, I'm not interested to put on an emotion onto my work. What I want is to give clear task, and that something will resonate out of it, and everybody will have his own experience. And I think by working with universal symbols, like a chicken, everybody have their own experience to that thing. So it's going to resonate differently. Even if I'm aiming for something, even if my path is to work on a specific like body and soul aspect, maybe someone will receive it completely differently, and it's okay. Like, I want that openness into the work. I don't want to, bring on a tragedy or an emotional layer that it doesn't have to be like put out there. Like, this is what you guys have to feel by seeing the work. It can be received differently.
Looking at the titles of a few of your former creations, there was Hit and Fall, which was a duet with Martin Messier quite a few years ago. That was presented also at that time at the FTA. Then you did Soak, then you did Anti, and now Charcuterie. all of them have a very physical aspect in the names. Like Hit and Fall is very much about this physicality of the body. Soak, about the sponge-like quality. Entaille and Charcuterie again, about the flesh, about the meat. Is this something that you find yourself always going back to, the physicality of the flesh as part of a performance? Do you feel that this is maybe the essence of what you're interested creatively?
It could be. I think it's my unconscious that is always putting that forward. Like I'm not consciously choosing that, but I think I'm a very physical dancer, and that experience might be pushing me. Like I think the body is a very powerful tool, and I think I'm very intrigued and passionate about this tool and all the layers that compose who we are, and it's why I choose dance and not theater. So probably it's there in the background, and it's always like coming up.
There's an interesting shift that started with Entaille and that's continuing with Charcuterie, basing this on my part from what I've seen before of your work. As I mentioned, Hit and Fall and Soak, they were both very physical performances, very dense in, quote unquote. With Entaille, there was more of a performative, like performance art almost element that started to seep in. And now with Charcuterie, from what you've described, it's much more task-based.
Yes.
So you remove that set choreography aspect of it. What do you feel brought you on this new path of moving away from set choreography, from very physical, dancey moments into a bit more of a performance aspect?
I think I've always been interested in performance as a visual arts performance. I've always been very inspired by artists, or so it was always there. But I think that creation of Charcuterie, Entaille, and the next one, it's a very personal event that made me create that. And that event, actually, I'm going to say what happened is that I think 4 years ago, I was really close to get a brain surgery. And I lost a part of my peripheral vision because I had bleeding in my brain. And I think I needed time to move away from that experience, but I wanted to use that experience to create something. And I think the experience makes me go away from what I know. It's like what is the best way to put that experience into a creation? So I'm not thinking of like, oh, I need to create movement, or I'm really digging from that experience and trying to see which components are going to be the most relevant for me. And like I said, like working with the chicken for me was a big issue at the beginning, because it's not something I want. Like in my head, if I think like, oh, you're going to do a creation, like I don't want to work with a chicken. Like really, like I'm going to do that. But at the same time, in my unconscious, like it feels right from the experience that I lived. It's exactly like I felt like I was a piece of meat and I didn't know what was happening with me. So the chicken seems super relevant. So I'm trying to really go into that line of what the project needs, not what do my intellectual wants me to do and what will look nice and be look good in my process. It's like, okay, that major event, like I want to put this into a more a bigger reflection. And what do I need to put on stage to make this happen? So I think it's why I had that shift.
Another constant I've seen from the work, I've seen from you, is this notion of duality and dichotomy. So the double on stage comes back very often. It's something that we saw in Hit and Fall, more the dichotomy there of the dancer and the musician, the man and the woman, clashing and coming together at the same time. With Soak, and with Antai, there was more of a doubling, and
Yep.
Soak especially with the black hoodie,
Yep.
and you were dancing in it with Brianna Lombardo in the first run. You both have a very similar physicality, so there was this doubling effect very much present. With Rachel Harris and Esther Rousseau-Morin in Antai, they have a different physicality, but they do have a bit of similarity at the same time. There was this mirror effect happening in the piece. Is this something that you feel? Why exactly this duality and this dichotomy? Is it based on your past creating more solo work? Do you feel that this is the natural evolution of doing a solo?
No, I think, working with Rachel and Esther, it was a complete, I don't know, it just happened. It's Montréal Danse who put me with these two dance interprètes. And as soon as I started working with them, it was like this meeting that I never had before, where we understood each other really well. Like, they were connecting with my ideas. Like I said, I didn't have to move to create the work. I could just explain what I was looking for, and they were completely willing to go forward with it. And I know that I have this obsession about similarity. So I think it's just part of one of my obsession. Like what I found, and it's funny because in our, in contemporary dance, we're often into not dancing together, not being rhythmical, and sometimes I realize like, this is what I found the most powerful about dancing, is people moving their body at the same time, at the same rhythm, in the same space. And I don't know, every time I go see a show and there's this moment of union, a meeting, I just find this like so powerful. It's like the most graceful, like, it's almost spiritual, that like moment. So I think this strikes me, and I'm kind of like intrigued to dig into that. As much as the dichotomy of that interests me, as much as the coming together and interests me too. And I think it's like, I don't want to pursue that, but it's coming up, it's coming back in the studio, and I'm like, okay, it's there again. I'll keep working on it. How can I go farther into that? It's, when something comes back to you, you just ask yourself, okay, I need to push it more, and I push it more until I'm at the step where I want to work with more dancers.
You're gonna need to do a piece with odd numbers.
Yeah, that's
for
it
it to work.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring up and didn't bring up yet was the fact that you're presenting this as part of the Offta, and you were there at the early beginnings of the Offta. Can you tell us a bit about that experience when the Offta started? How you came along with the Offta, like how exactly you're involved, and what the festival was like when it started?
I kind of got involved in the Offta because I got my brain accident. So I was off work. I was dancing at that time. So they put me on like 1 year of non-dancing until I was seeing a specialist. And so I kind of like, I had time, and I was working on a theater show as a movement coach, and I kind of met Jasmine in a hallway, and she was like, "Oh, we're working on this project. Can you come and give us a hand?" They already did 1 year in theater, and they wanted to introduce more dance. So she was asking me to it really started like in her kitchen on the corner of the table, talking about what was happening in the community, the needs, where the artists were in their evolution, how there was a certain part of artists that they were doing their work, but they felt like the big festivals weren't for them. And then suddenly Jasmine is really good to build team work. She's amazing for that, to bring like different people together. And suddenly we had a artistic committee, and we started, talking about people and creative process and how we were working and the ecology in the milieu, and wanting the theater and the dance to meet and the performance. And from that, we were all like volunteer workers. And for me, completely changed my way of working in the dance community. Like, I got involved in a way that I was never involved in. And, I wouldn't have created l'organisme if I didn't do the Offta, because it showed me that with different, when you have a team of people working towards the same idea, it could be very constructive, relevant, and I learned so much by, seeing how the theater people were getting organized, their view, their idea. We had like big debates. Like, this was the fun part about that artistic committee at that time, is that we weren't agreeing with everything, and we had to like debate for weeks. And, when you really liked an artist, you had to think of like how you would manage to make that artist, you would look on what that artist was working on, and you had to really make your point into the ecology of the programmation. And from that, after a certain point, I started doing my own work a little bit more. And I felt that, we think, at that time, we were thinking that the Offta is made for generation to pass. Like, it's not a place where you sit at the Offta and you say like, okay, I'm going to stay there for the next 20 years. Like, at one point we felt like, okay, we're becoming the old timers. Like, we need to leave the place to another generation. And now it's amazing because it's a whole new generation that is organizing the Offta. And I think it needs to stay like this. And maybe in the artistic committee as well. Like, it needs to be like in touch with what's happening here and now in Montreal. The FTA is doing a super good job in representing what's happening in the world. And I think the Offta needs to be representing what's happening now in Montreal, in the back alley.
Well, this was Caroline Laurin-Beaucage, who came to talk to us about Charcuterie, which will be part of a triple feature on May 31st at 8 p.m. at the Monument National. And this will be, as we said, part of the Offta Festival from May 27th to June 1st in Montreal. So, Caroline, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
You're welcome.
Welcome back, everyone. Now in studio with us is Andrew Tay, who you probably know for many of the different hats he puts on as choreographer, as performer, as artistic director for Wants and Needs Dance, for Short and Sweet, for Piss in the Pool, and so many other roles that he has taken on. And he is here now to speak about his latest creative project called Monsters, Angels, and Aliens Are Not a Substitute for Spirituality. That's a tongue twister. And this project will be presented as part of the Offta Festival this year in Montreal. And it will be part of a triple feature with a work by Donald Trépanier called Le Chantier des Coquilles, and with Caroline Laurin-Beaucage, whom we've had in studio right before, who will, as we said, present her latest piece, Charcuterie. So, Andrew, hi, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks. So this latest work, in the notes you describe as a quote-unquote solo. So this is a piece that you'll be presenting, well, it's a solo, I guess, but why exactly the quotes-unquote solo for this work that you're presenting?
Yeah, I think I put the quotes just because I feel like compared to traditional solo, it's not really just about watching me, the work. There's a lot of interaction with the public, and the public is involved in the work as it's created. So I don't feel like it's a traditional kind of solo. That's why I put the quotes.
Well, do you feel that using the term solo anyway as a presentational aspect of the piece, do you feel that you're actually questioning even the notion of solos by doing a work like that where there is such an intrinsic notion of audience participation?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm challenging like solo as a form necessarily, but I'm definitely kind of challenging the notion of a solo as something that if I'm a performer doing a solo, that you just sit and you watch what I do and you take it. So this is something that I'm definitely interested in, especially in regards to kind of the ideas of the work itself.
When you're talking about engaging the audience, this pops out at me, the idea of creating conditions which permit the audience to engage in spiritual notions without directly making reference to spirituality in the work itself. Can you elaborate on that and give us a bit of an idea of where that goes?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty important to me because I think like dealing with ideas of spirituality, it can be tough, especially to like a contemporary audience. Or I've been doing a lot for queer performance festivals as well. So engaging this idea with people who probably have like skeptical or rocky relationships with these kind of ideas becomes interesting. So yeah, I'm trying to get people to engage in ideas of spirituality without ever directly saying this is about spirituality, or this is about prayer, or this is about meditation, or without like banging them over the head with it. So I mean, I'm using all kinds of different strategies during the work. There's a thinking practice at the beginning that's probably the most clear example, where I have 5 people from the public come and sit with me, and we sit and we think about different kinds of people. It's kind of a score. And I think it brings to mind ideas of prayer and meditation and all of these kinds of notions without, I don't want to say like manipulates or tricks people into thinking about these ideas, but gets them to engage in it without having some kind of guard up. And I think that's important for me.
And it seems like too, you're broadening the scope of what the spirituality is, you know, when you're talking about, believing there's life out in the universe other than us, like that being a form of spirituality as well, and kind of. Yeah,
I'm definitely questioning how we engage with spirituality and what spirituality actually is today, because I feel like and this is a troubling question, and I want it to kind of remain a problematic kind of question, because I'm thinking about like even going to a performance itself can be looked at as a spiritual experience. I mean, a lot of people, when they go and see like their favorite band perform or something, and there's this like kind of engagement or like back and forth call and response, this kind of thing gives them this kind of spiritual experience that they probably don't get from church, or they probably don't go to church anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm questioning these things, and also the rise of like pop culture spiritualities, like books like The Secret, and these self-help kind of things that become almost spiritual texts for people.
And as part of your research, did you delve into those pop culture, like pop spirituality books? And there's a bunch of different type of media that they can be on. Even shows like Oprah, to some extent, for some people, can be a spiritual experience.
For sure.
Did you plunge yourself into something like that in order to do some research? And if so, how was that?
I mean, it's a really funny answer. No. I mean, a little bit. I definitely I've never read The Secret.
That's a shame. It changed my life.
Really? Yeah. It has changed a lot. But the interesting thing for me is it has changed a lot of people's lives. But for me, there's also something in what I'm working on in this. It's like a questioning of superficiality as well. So I didn't want to get into doing too much crazy research on all kinds of levels in terms of these pop culture spiritualities. I mean, I looked at really quick things on the internet. It was this kind of really cheap kind of research. And also with rituals and stuff like that, I didn't go into crazy research about what kind of rituals happen. I kind of wanted to keep it pretty superficial, and then by presenting that and it's still becoming something maybe deeper or something spiritual, that creating another kind of question or problem within the work itself.
When talking about a subject such as spirituality rather than religion, which is very much a fundamental notion in Western culture, you're going to think about religion, you're going to think about Judaism and Christianity mostly for Western cultures. But when you talk about spirituality as a wider thing, as a wider umbrella, something that comes up quite often will be Western tendencies to appropriate elements of cultures, especially in the 60s, 70s. You saw a lot of that happening with Hinduism and Buddhism. And, it sort of goes back to that same notion of skimming the surface of something, of really just appropriating something without understanding the deeper elements. Is this notion of appropriation something that you were conscious of when creating the piece, or that you bring the audience to a certain level of realization in the work?
It's not like a political agenda of the work to make people aware of this, for sure, but I definitely think that that I'm thinking about these ideas. I mean, I'm always more thinking about them more in the terms of the popular culture and the more modern society kind of context. And for sure, I think the rise too of yoga practices and Pilates practices that it's so commercialized, but at the same time, people think of it as part of a spiritual practice in some way. This is another problem that I think is, another question that I'm having, and I think it appears in the work a little bit.
I'm picturing ritual is also expanding in its definition in this context, and I'm wondering where ritual differs from habit or something like that in your opinion.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think that's an interesting question. Yeah. I really don't have an answer for that, and I kind of think that's also in the work and also kind of important to think about.
And this work is something that has been presented in the past, yes? I
mean, it has. I've been working on it. Some elements I worked on at a residency I did at UCNC. I think it was in 2012, and then at a residency in Hamburg. So I've been developing some of the ideas, and then I performed a kind of rough version of it in Toronto last year at the Rhubarb Festival at Buddies and Bad Times. But it's a way different version of the work that's being presented at the Offta. because in Toronto it was in this cabaret setting. The work was very kind of cabaret, and it worked really well. But I kind of wanted to, for me, I wanted to remove some of these cabaret elements in the performance that I'm going to do for this version at the Offta, and see what happens.
The element you talked about earlier about bringing audience members on the stage with you in the performance space and thinking about people who are also either there or not there. That's something that you did at the last Piss in the Pool in a format that was very convivial and very, I mean, let's face it, Piss in the Pool is not a traditional performance space as we often think about. In a way, it's also incestuous a bit because there's a lot of people of the milieu, of the community who know each other. For a show like the FTA where that element will not be there as much, is this something that you approach differently, that notion of thinking and of connecting on a mental aspect in a way in this new performance situation?
I think for that thinking practice, I'm trying to approach it from the same way, even though the context is changing. I mean, I have performed it in many different kinds of contexts, in a theater, in studios. When I'm in other cities, I've been doing it quite a bit when I'm doing residencies abroad. And I feel like what's more important for me is to keep the kind of tone, this kind of comfortable, casual tone at the beginning. And I think this can be achieved, hopefully, in any space by the way that it's performed and by the kind of care that I take with the people at the beginning of the piece, at the beginning of this practice, this thinking practice. And I think this carries over throughout the rest of the piece. So for sure, it's more of a challenge in like a space where maybe I don't know everyone, and it's more formal. Although I'm feeling that the space for the show at the Offta is not going to be super, super formal. But it's a challenge, and that's like part of the work. And I think that's fun for me to try to do, to kind of keep this casual.
One thing that we see more and more is discussions, especially with works that can be a bit more challenging for the audience. A lot of people seem to feel that they need to explain their ideas afterwards. Is this something that will be part of your work, this discussion with the audience, so that they can be a bit more on the same level as the creator of the work? Is that something that you want to bring in, or you would rather just trust your audience and let them absorb what they want?
I'm more on the side of like giving the audience credit to let them take whatever they want from the work. I mean, for me, this work is like I want it to have multiple things that can be received. So yes, I mean, obviously for my press release and for talking to you guys, we're talking a lot about spirituality. But whatever people receive from the outside, I think is really interesting and really important to keep it open. I mean, I've done a lot of work, especially when I'm doing these cabaret performances, where I kind of frame it so that people understand or have this frame they see it through, or afterwards I talk about it and then they make some kind of connection and this kind of resolves something for them. But I'm not really interested so much in this resolution. I'm more interested even if people walk away troubled by their questions. That to me is more interesting than people being like, oh yeah, I got it, or I understood what he's trying to get at.
You also mentioned in your writing about the work the notion of kitsch as being part of the ritualistic aspect of the performance. And quite often when we see kitsch being used, especially in Montreal, there's something that the Montreal scene does quite a bit of, using kitsch as a bit of a, not a mask, but a bit of something to protect the creators, and quite often just, again, goes on the surface, stays very much on the surface without exploring anything deeper to what kitsch can represent. Mm-hmm. What is your approach to the notion of kitsch in this ritualistic experience that you're creating?
Well, for me, it kind of relates to what we were talking about before, about the pop culture philosophy that's coming out, or the rise of yoga and Pilates as spiritual practice, but people who are doing them on a very kind of commercial level. So for me, a lot of the work, I'm taking like really cheap found objects, and trying to transform them into things that either have like mystical or spiritual kind of power or representation within what I'm doing, and also kind of kitsch or cheap movements as well. For example, like a robot breakdance, but trying to make this
important,
give it value, and then also once it has value to take that value away really quickly. So yeah, to kind of like make these cheap things sacred and then make sacred things
profane.
Cheap. I don't know about profane, but superficial. And that's like a question that I'm having, and how to do that. And then, yeah, what that says that we can so easily do that today.
And you've mentioned the work as not having a political agenda per se. Then with notions like this of imbuing something with value and removing it afterwards, the same could be said, I guess, to the audience relationship also. How do you stay away from judgment in this kind of performance, in this kind of creative aspect to the work?
Judgment in performing while I'm performing the work, or judgment in terms of the goal
both.
of what? Both?
Mm-hmm. The line's not that far, I feel, between the two, because it's a notion of approach to how you do things.
I think it's really hard work to not have judgment. I mean, in Toronto, I when I presented the first version, I really went in with this idea that I would have no judgment while I'm performing it, and that I'm doing specific things, and these specific things read whatever to the public, and the public reacts whatever way each time, and I was like, mentally, I said this is fine. And then as I kept performing the work, I did 5 performances of it. I think I got used to a certain kind of reaction, certain kind of effects that were being created, and it wasn't what I was necessarily wanted to work on. So I got comfortable in that, and then for one performance, I didn't get those, and it totally threw me off and made me confused, even though it was something that I really told myself that I wasn't going to be working on. So yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say with that, but it's like it's something that I'm consciously trying not to do, is judge or during the performance, and also not put judgment on things in the materiality of the work itself.
So you've mentioned the presentation in Toronto. It's been presented in front of a few queer audiences. What kind of energy do you feel it will differ in front of more queer audiences, quote unquote, compared to a bit more of a mainstream scene? Do you feel that the approach, the thematic, the sense of humor will be different? Do you need to approach it differently when it is in this kind of context, such as Buddies and Bad Times?
I don't think that in terms of the work that I'm doing, that I need to approach it different. I mean, I think there's things to think about when presenting to these more specific types of audiences, but in the end, I think that the difference between a queer audience and a contemporary art audience is pretty minimal. I mean, like, also if I even think about queer performance and regular performance, if I go to any dance festival, 80% of the work is performed by queer artists and made by queer artists, and it's not dubbed as a queer festival. So, I mean, I'm questioning these things and these labels. But, yeah.
You're having a bit of a big period at the moment. You've been traveling a bit for residencies. There's another short and sweet that's coming up soon, another Piss and Pull in the summer. What's next after this for Andrew as choreographer, as performer?
Well, I can talk about a few things. We're doing short and sweet as part of the FTA on June 5th. And it's a free show, and we have a pretty interesting concept. I think it's going to be really fun. We're calling it the Covers Edition. So we're asking artists to cover another artist's work. And it can be work from any discipline. So like a performance artist can cover a visual artist's work, or a song or whatever they want to cover. And we're also trying to get artists to question the notion of what a cover is or can be. So we're looking to see works that like critique another artwork through performance, that take ideas from work and then make something else from it. Remixes, all of this kind of stuff we're hoping to see. I think it's going to be really fun. And about Piss in the Pool this year, I think it's really sad, but I think we're actually not going to be doing Piss in the Pool this year. It was going to be our 10-year anniversary, but unfortunately the venue is under construction. And for our 10-year, we were kind of hoping to be in the venue. So we're thinking about what we're going to do, but unfortunately right now we might be taking a break for this year from Piss in the Pool, but it will definitely be back next year. And after that, I mean, I'm working a lot with a choreographer from Vienna right now, Doris Ulich, performing in this work called More Than Naked. And it's a really interesting project. It's 20 artists from all over the world, and she's questioning nudity and why use nudity in performance in 2014. So to remove nudity from context of like sexuality, vulnerability, to try to remove it from that and to use it as materiality. And it's a really fun project. We're showing it around a lot, and I'm trying to get it to come to Montreal.
So Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show today to talk to us about monsters, angels, and aliens are not a substitute for spirituality. This will be part. It takes a moment to catch your breath after. So this will be part of the Offta. The festival is running from May 27th to June 1st, and this will be part of a triple feature with Donald Trépanier and Caroline Laurin-Beaucage. So thank you so much for coming on today, Andrew.
Thank you so much, you guys.
So that wraps up the formal interview portion of the podcast today. I did want to take a moment and talk a bit about some other stuff that's going on in the Dirty Feet universe. In particular, we have a follow-up to a previous episode just a couple weeks ago when we were speaking about Réaction en chaîne. That was the 76th episode of ours. It's a project started by some UQAM students. That was a website, a collaborative artistic kind of project. And I'm going to have JD take over from here because he actually participated in a little, would you call it a residency or a workshop with them?
Well, it was a residency that they had gotten with La Gare de la Danse. So it was in the small studio of La Gare de la Danse. And basically, the Réaction en chaîne team had access to that room for the whole week, and they were offering spots for people who were interested in creating for the web platform, either videos or photos. And throughout the week, people were had a possibility of uploading it. And for people who might have missed the episode, basically Réaction en chaîne is this web platform where they create links, they create chains of creation, where someone creates something, puts it on the website, and people have the possibility of offering a reaction to it. So basically creating new links in the chain. And so basically someone can just post a picture and someone will create a reaction to it, where it would be a video that would be influenced or based off of the picture that was posted, or it could be the other way around, someone doing a video and then someone creating pictures based on that. And what was really fun about the experience, in my case, I was supposed to do it with Steph, our co-host, who had to drop out because of scheduling conflicts. So I ended up doing it with Caroline Laurin, who came on the show with us to discuss it. And it was really interesting because I don't know Caroline that much personally. We've talked before, but it was the first time that we had to come up with something together and that we had to create something. So we're thrown in the fold like that. With inspirations that we could base ourselves off of, and we had two moments together in the studio to create something based off of the rock chain that was created already by a bunch of people. And it was really interesting because we had to work with what we had before, but still give it our own twist, and that's a difficult thing I found. Of creating something that is linked enough to be, to respect the spirit of the project while not following too much what's been done. And this was one of the biggest challenges I found, but it was really interesting. I'll be editing the video and posting it eventually. I'll be sure to let people know when it's up, but that's really stressful. Doing the editing part is, it's kind of scary.
The other piece of Dirty Feet news that we have for you is about the Montreal Fringe Festival. At the end of last week's episode, we spoke with Amy Blackmore about the festival and the dance programming that we can expect to see there this June. Leading up to June, we've actually launched a contest so that you can win a super pass. What the super pass does is it gets you into hundreds of different shows for free, and which includes, of course, the 8 dance shows that we referred to last week. It's worth about $250. It's an incredible value. The festival runs for almost the whole month of June. You have lots of time to see lots of shows, and winning is pretty easy. We're launching questions every once in a while, so you have to keep checking our Facebook page. So you just go to facebook.com/dirtyfeetpodcast, and there you can answer the questions by sending us a personal message, so you get to keep your answer secret. And then every right answer that you submit means that you get your name in a draw, and that the winner of that draw will be given a super pass to the Fringe Festival here in Montreal for the year 2014. So it's an amazing prize, and it's real simple to win. Go ahead and check it out on our Facebook page.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par,
produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Moret-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web, ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on the website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.